Harald and Tostig were completing the repairs on the small boat abandoned by Leif's Vinland expedition. Years of exposure to the salt air, the wind, and the pelting rain had damaged the small wooden 12-person craft, but at the hand of these master builders the repairs went quickly and without much incident. The small boat was supported on 2 struts, as it had been when they first arrived at the settlement, but what had looked like a dead relic was now returning to life. They tipped the boat on its side and replaced its rotted boards and planks fashioned from the trees surrounding the meadow. A resin made of pine sap bubbled in a pot resting over an open fire. Into this Tostig dipped a piece of shaved wood, thin enough to be pliable but sturdy enough that he was able to spread the thick, tar-like mixture into the small breaches left by years of disuse and neglect. "How are the repairs coming along?" Thorfinn asked as he approached them. "Faster than we expected," the dwarf answered, wiping sweat from his face with a dirty rag. The wind suddenly changed, and Thorfinn smelled the pine tar warming on the open fire. The aroma caught in his throat. On a much smaller hearth, pine roots were heating to leach the tar out. The whole area smelled of burning wood, smoke, and long days spent outdoors. "Where did you get the resin?" Thorfinn asked. "We brought the pine tar with us," Tostig answered proudly, "to make repairs to the Mimir at sea when necessary." "Is that one of Gudrid's cooking pots?" Thorfinn eyed the pot suspiciously. "You better not let her catch you with it, or you'll never taste cooked food for as long as you are in this land." Tostig and Harald exchanged a look. Neither gave any indication which one of them had pilfered Gudrid's cooking vessel. They both looked guilty. Tostig walked over to the pot in the larger fire pit. He pulled the rag out of his pocket again, and took hold of the pot to steady it, while he gave the pine tar a slow stir. Thorfinn watched as the 2 men dipped plain pieces of wood into the bubbling tar, and coated the inside of the boat. The dry wood quickly soaked up the thick liquid, filling cracks and defects in the wooden planks, as well as the seams along the length of the boat. "Is the boat safe to transport the party to Markland and back?" Thorfinn asked. "I can't guarantee her seaworthiness in open water," Harald answered. "As you can see, the wood is weathered and old." "But we reinforced its structure," Tostig interrupted. "We've replaced several planks near the prow. It will take the party safely to the shore of Markland and back again." Thorfinn's unease about his wife traveling without him to an unknown and potentially dangerous land had lifted a little. But even though he had come to fully trust Tostig, he still feared for Gudrid's safety. He suspected his feelings were laced with jealousy of a past that kept leaking into the present, a past over which he had no control. He felt foolish for being jealous of Gudrid's dead husbands. It had nothing to do with the existence of past husbands he knew, but rather the capacity in which they still existed for Gudrid. He realized that these feelings he wrestled with couldn't be resolved within the confines of his imagination. He needed to look at them with respect to the love, trust, and respect that Gudrid and Thorfinn had for one another. "Thorfinn, Gudrid," Jarlabanke yelled. "Come quickly, the Mimir is gone." Thorfinn rolled over and opened his eyes to see Jarlabanke in the doorway, frantically yelling at them. He didn't register every word, but he did notice Jarlabanke's desperate tone. Before Thorfinn had a chance to question him further, Jarlabanke was out the door of the grass house, vanishing as quickly as he'd appeared. Thorfinn dragged himself out of bed, muttering curses. Noises outside beyond the perimeter of the community silenced him. They were coming from the direction of the water. He pulled on his tunic and staggered to the door, still groggy from his abrupt awakening. "This better be important," he mumbled. "What's wrong, hun?" Gudrid asked from the bed. "I don't know. I'm going to find out." He tugged on his boots. As he opened the door, Gudrid rolled over to go back to sleep. Thorfinn walked toward the beach where the settlers had gathered, talking excitedly to each other and pointing. He couldn't understand what all the commotion was about, until he looked out at the water. For a second he noticed something odd but couldn't figure out what, and then it hit him. The Mimir was gone. Tostig saw Thorfinn approaching the group and met him. "Tostig, how could this have happened?" "The tide must have pushed the Mimir away from the rock and pulled her out to sea." It took a second for Thorfinn to realize it, but they had no way of getting home again. No one in Groenlandia or Iceland would know that they made it to Vinland, so no one would be searching for them. He had decided that this was going to be his new home, and the home of his family, and the future home of his people. But to be cut off from his homeland, to know that the possibility existed that he may never return there, that was what he found more upsetting than anything else. Then he realized that they could always build another ship. Vinland and Markland had enough resources to build a fleet of ships. Still, the sense of loss lingered. The Mimir was almost a part of him. Thorfinn had named it himself, just as a parent names a child. Thoughts of building another ship, a better ship that would take them to far-off places, didn't seem to help. Thorfinn knew that in time he'd forget the Mimir, but... Thorfinn, Harald and I will lead a team to design another ship that will take us back to Groenlandia, Tostig said. How long will that take? He asked. We could have it ready to sail 2 summers from now. 2 Misery seemed like a very long time, Thorfinn thought. But they were on Vinland for the immediate future, and he had no plans of returning to Groenlandia or Iceland until they had enough goods to make the return trip profitable. He could wait 2 Misery. Assemble the senior settlers in the great hall, he ordered. He turned away and headed back to the house.